I have been a magistrate for 31 years, and I have spent the better part of my adult life in rooms where men said the wrong thing. I know a dismissal when I hear one. I know, too, the particular silence that follows when a dismissal turns out to have been wrong, that species of quiet that is not merely the absence of sound, but something with weight and shape, something that presses on the chest and does not lift for days. I heard that silence once, in the members' library of the Wrentham Club, on a Thursday evening in late October, and I have never been able to account for it in any language I was trained to use. We were there for the autumn recital. The Wrentham has held one every year since 1887. So reads the plaque near the entrance, above the coat hooks, which is the sort of fact members mention rather more often than is strictly necessary. The evening was organized, as it had been for the past 7 years, by a man named Dorian Ashworth, who had the title of Artistic Director of the Harcastle Concert Series, and who wore it the way some men wear a good suit, conspicuously, at all times, with the collar turned just so. He was not a cruel man, I should say that plainly. He was simply a man who had occupied a position of cultural authority for long enough that the gap between his opinion and reality had ceased to trouble him. He believed that music was a matter of pedigree, of lineage, of training, of the right name on the right program, and this belief had served him adequately in most of the rooms he had entered. It did not serve him that evening. The scheduled pianist was one Adrian Croft, a young man of 32 who had recorded 2 albums and whose photograph appeared regularly in the sort of publications that cover such things. He had cancelled, I was told, owing to a chest complaint, and the news had reached Ashworth some 3 hours before we were to begin. Ashworth handled it with the practiced composure of a man accustomed to minor catastrophes, arranged for drinks to be brought forward, and assured the assembled 30-odd of us that matters would be resolved. He did not, I think, have a clear idea of how. I was standing near the window with my friend Gerald Purvis, retired, as I am, from the bench, when we noticed the laundry woman. She came through the service door at the library's far end, as she presumably came every Thursday, carrying a stack of pressed linens for the side tables. She was perhaps 68 or 70, small and upright, her gray hair pinned back with an economy that suggested it had always been this way. She wore a dark work dress and a canvas apron, and she moved through the room with the practiced invisibility of someone who has passed through many rooms over many years. The members parted for her without noticing they had done so. She set the linens at the table nearest the Steinway, smoothed the topmost cloth with one pass of her hand, and then, perhaps because she was closer to the piano than she had intended, or perhaps for some other reason I cannot say, she rested her right hand flat on the closed fallboard. She did not open it. She simply rested her hand there, for perhaps 2 seconds, and then lifted it and turned to go. Ashworth saw it. He had been standing 3 feet away, talking to no one in particular about the Croft situation, and he saw the hand on the lid, and something in him, some impulse that I suspect he would not have been able to explain either, made him call across to her. He said, "You're welcome to play something, if you're so fond of it. Something simple, something the gentleman might enjoy, while we wait for things to be arranged. A little tune." There was a ripple of amusement in the room, gentle, the sort that does not quite become laughter. Several of the members smiled at their glasses. Gerald, beside me, raised an eyebrow that said, "Well, there it is." The woman turned. She looked at Ashworth for a moment, and there was nothing readable in her face. No embarrassment, no amusement, no affront. She said, very quietly, "All right." She set down the remaining linens on the side table. She moved to the bench, placed one hand on the height adjustment knob, and turned it, twice, fully, without looking down, without testing the result, to a setting she appeared to know precisely. She sat. She opened the fallboard. She placed her hands in her lap, and was still for a moment, and the room went a little quieter, the way rooms do when something unexpected is being prepared for. And then she began. I have tried, since, to identify the precise moment when the room understood that something had changed. I do not think it was a single moment. It was a gradual thing, the way light in a room changes when a cloud moves off the sun, and you are not aware of the shift until you notice, all at once, that the quality of the air is different. The first notes of the Chopin were so soft that I was not certain, for a moment, that the piece had started. A single melodic line in the right hand, unhurried, feeling its way into the room, the way a question does when it is sincere. The ballade in A minor begins gently, almost tentatively. It seems to be gathering itself, deciding whether to speak. And it was this quality that she found first, that suspended, searching quality, and the room felt it immediately. The smiles faded. Gerald lowered his glass. I should say that I have no musical training. I cannot name an interval or identify a key signature. What I know about music is what I know about people under pressure, which is this. You can hear the difference between performance and truth. In a courtroom, I heard it every day of my working life. The voice that is constructing its account, and the voice that is simply remembering. She was not performing. She was remembering. Whatever was happening between her hands and the keys was not for us, not exactly. It was something we were permitted to witness, which is a different thing entirely. The ballad grew. That is the only word I have for it. Grew. What had begun as a quiet melodic line opened into something larger, the left hand now carrying a weight that seemed disproportionate to the room's size. The music filling the space between the bookshelves and the high ceiling without effort, without announcement. Two of the men near the fireplace had stopped their conversation so gradually that I do not think they noticed they had done it. A woman who had been examining the program for the cancelled recital set it down on the arm of her chair and did not pick it up again. I watched her hands. They were not the hands of a woman pressing linen for a living. Or rather, they were, because the work had not erased what the music required of them. They moved with an authority that had nothing to do with effort. They knew what they were doing. They had known for decades, I suspected, and had simply been doing something else in the meantime. The middle section of the piece arrived, and the music changed character, became something more urgent, more driven, the right hand now crossing and reaching, the tempo gathered tight. I have read since that this section is among the more demanding in the repertoire, though I could not have told you so at the time. What I could tell you is that the room had, by this point, come entirely to rest. No one moved. No glass was lifted. Ashworth, who had been standing with his arms crossed and an expression of mild curiosity, had let his arms fall to his sides, and his expression had changed in a way I cannot describe precisely. Not embarrassment, not wonder exactly, but something between the two, the look of a man who has just realized he was standing in the wrong place. The piece darkened, near its end. The ballade in A minor is not a cheerful thing. It does not resolve in the way one expects, does not offer the comfort of a tidy conclusion. It moves toward its close, with a kind of insistence, a pressing quality, and then arrives at something that is more reckoning than resolution. I understand from reading about it since that the ending is considered one of Chopin's more severe, a thing that closes not with consolation but with finality. The last chord struck hard, without apology. She played this passage with complete honesty. There was no softening of it. 3 rows ahead of me, I saw a man's shoulders rise and fall, and I understood from the particular way they moved that he was not coughing. The final chord rang and was held. She held the sustain pedal down, letting the sound decay at its own pace, not hurrying it, and then there was nothing. The room made no sound for what I calculate to have been 8 or 9 full seconds. Not because anyone had decided to be respectful, because no one knew yet how to move. Then Gerald, beside me, put his hands together once, slowly, and that single sound seemed to release something in the room, and the rest of us followed, and then the man by the fireplace was on his feet, and then another, and by the time I had risen fully from my chair, the whole room was standing, and the sound of 35 pairs of hands was something I felt in my sternum rather than heard with my ears. She sat for a moment with her hands in her lap, not bowing, not acknowledging us particularly. Then she closed the fallboard, and rose, and moved to collect her linens from the side table. Ashworth crossed the room to her. I was near enough to observe but not to hear the whole exchange. He said something, spoke to her for perhaps 40 seconds, and she replied in a few short sentences. Then she went out through the service door, and he stood where she had left him, and did not speak to anyone for some time. I learned the outline of her story later that evening, in pieces, from different people. Her name was Cecile Pratt. She had worked at the Wrentham Club for 19 years, attending to the linen and the table dressings for Thursday evenings. Before that, long before, so long ago that no one at the club had known to connect it, she had studied at the Guildhall School of Music, in her 20s, and had played seriously, concert level, She and her husband together. He on the cello, she at the piano. Walter Pratt had died 23 years earlier, in November, and after his death, she had closed the piano they kept in their flat in Alderton, and had not, so far as anyone knew, opened it since. She had not played for anyone in 23 years. She had gone on pressing linens and attending to Thursday evenings, and had not mentioned it, not once, to a soul. I do not know what made her sit down that night. Perhaps it was the hand on the fallboard. Perhaps it was 23 years of passing a grand piano on Thursday evenings and holding the thing closed. Perhaps it was something in Ashworth's invitation, something in the lightness with which he offered the dismissal, that opened, unexpectedly, like a catch released. I have thought about it often and I cannot say. What I can say is this. I have sat in judgment over a great deal of human conduct, and I have developed, over 31 years, a reasonably clear sense of what it means to be heard. Not heard in the narrow legal sense, testimony entered, facts recorded, but heard in the fuller sense, the sense in which what a person carries inside them is finally acknowledged, by a room that receives it, as real. Cecile Pratt had carried the Chopin Ballade in A minor for 23 years, inside a closed fallboard, inside a flat in Alderton, inside a canvas apron, inside 19 years of Thursday evenings. And on a Thursday evening in October, in the members' library of the Wrentham Club, she set it down. I do not know whether she felt lighter after. I hope she did. I know that I, who had come for a pleasant evening of professional piano playing and decent claret, went home, carrying something I had not arrived with, something that sat quietly in the chest, and did not announce itself, except in the odd moment of stillness, when it made itself known. Ashworth, I understand, drove to the club the following morning and spoke to the building manager for some time. The Steinway in the members' library is now unlocked on Tuesday afternoons, between 2 and 4, when the library is otherwise empty. No one has formally explained why. The members have not, to my knowledge, asked. I was 73 years old that October. I have heard a great many performances in my life, in halls and on stages, and in rooms not unlike that one. I have never heard anything I would compare to 19 years of pressing linen and 23 years of silence arriving, without announcement, at the keys of a Steinway on a Thursday evening. That is all I know how to say about it. I have never found a better language.